If you watched the last video, you may have recognized something. That quiet emptiness. That subtle disconnection from a life that looks completely fine from the outside. And if you recognize that, you probably recognize this too. You're tired. Not in the obvious way. Not because you worked too much. Not because you didn't sleep. But in a way that doesn't go away. You wake up already drained. You move through the day at half speed. Small tasks feel heavier than they should. By the evening, you're exhausted, even though nothing dramatic happened. There's no crisis, no collapse, no overload, and yet you feel burned out. Today, we're not talking about how to fix it. We're talking about what it actually is. This kind of exhaustion is confusing because it doesn't match your workload. You're not working extreme hours. You're not in survival mode. Your schedule might even look balanced, but internally, something feels off. You feel drained without a clear reason. Small tasks require more effort than they should. Conversations take energy. Even simple decisions feel heavier. When you try to explain it, the usual answers don't fit. You're sleeping enough. You're not overwhelmed. You're not in crisis. So why are you exhausted? Because we've been taught that burnout only comes from overwork. Too many hours, too much stress, too little recovery. And when burnout looks like that, the solution seems obvious. Do less, rest more. But this kind of exhaustion doesn't respond to rest, because it isn't about how much you're doing, it's about how you're living. Overwork burnout is about capacity. You push past your limits. Your system can't recover. Eventually, it shuts down. That kind of burnout is visible. It has a clear cause. Too many hours, too much pressure, too little rest. But this exhaustion is different. It doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from living in a way that doesn't fully align with who you are. From constantly adjusting yourself. From performing roles that don't quite fit. From suppressing reactions that feel inconvenient. There's no dramatic breakdown, no measurable overload, just a steady, quiet drain. You're not collapsing. You're maintaining, and maintenance, when it never stops, is exhausting. Not because something is catastrophically wrong, but because something is slightly off. And slightly off, sustained over time, becomes depletion. Adaptation is normal, but constant adaptation is expensive. You soften your tone, you adjust your reactions, you filter your thoughts. You manage how you're perceived. Not dramatically, not consciously, but continuously. Every adjustment requires monitoring. Monitoring requires control. Control requires energy. And if most of your energy goes into regulating yourself instead of expressing yourself, something begins to shift. You start feeling tired in a deeper way. Not physically, structurally. It's like holding a posture that's slightly unnatural. You can hold it for an hour, maybe for a day, but if you hold it for years, your system begins to protest. And that protest is exhaustion. This is where frustration begins. You try to rest. You sleep more. You take time off. For a moment, you feel lighter. But as soon as you return to your normal routine, the heaviness returns. Because rest restores physical energy. But this exhaustion isn't primarily physical. It's psychological. It's about the gap between your inner structure and your external life. And when that gap remains, the drain resumes. You're not tired because you didn't rest. You're tired because something inside you is constantly compensating. and compensation is expensive. A large part of this exhaustion comes from living without internal permission. Internal permission means you're allowed to want what you want, to feel what you feel, to disagree, to say no without guilt. Most adults lose that space because modern life rewards stability, productivity, and performance. So you override yourself, you push through fatigue, you silence irritation, you minimize doubt. Over time, self-override becomes normal, and managing yourself every single day requires energy. Eventually, that energy runs out. Adult life is structured around roles: professional, partner, friend, provider. Roles are necessary, but every role carries expectations, and meeting those expectations requires effort. Over time, you can lose contact with who you are outside of those roles. Not because that part disappears, but because keeping it suppressed requires energy. Suppression is quiet, but it's heavy. And carrying something heavy for years creates exhaustion. When exhaustion feels psychological, the instinct is to optimize. Better routines, better time management, better productivity systems. You try to organize your life more efficiently. But this isn't a scheduling problem. It's an alignment problem. No productivity strategy can restore energy that's being drained by internal contradiction. No system can compensate for living slightly out of sync with yourself. This isn't about managing your life better. It's about questioning whether your current structure is sustainable. And that's a deeper question, one that doesn't have a quick answer. Exhaustion is not always a defect. Sometimes it's a signal that something about the way you're living requires constant internal effort. You can keep going. Most people do. You can keep functioning. You can keep appearing stable. But the cost keeps accumulating, and systems that operate on internal strain eventually destabilize. Not suddenly, gradually. Burnout without overwork is often an early warning, not of collapse, but of misalignment. So if you feel burned out even without overload, you're not lazy, you're not weak, you're not broken, you're tired because you've been holding yourself in a shape that doesn't fully fit. And that requires more energy than most people realize. This kind of exhaustion doesn't mean you need fixing. It means something needs attention. In the next video, we'll look at what happens when this internal misalignment turns into conflict. Because exhaustion is often just the first layer.